Hi, welcome to Sushi Society. I'm Patricia Bader-Johnston, and in this segment, I'm really happy to introduce a very special, not yet sushi, but on the eve of sushiness, our contributor for today that we'd like to feature. And you may ask why a very young looking woman is going to be joining Sushi Society as a major contributor. Well, there are a couple of reasons. We feel that there needs to be cross-generational matching within Sushi Society as a community. We also need to have opinion leaders in the role that women leaders need to play. We also know that sushi women need to have inspiring role models, entrepreneurs who've already launched successful businesses. And we need to have some attention paid to the role of daughters for mothers. We'll also be talking about mothers for daughters, but at this stage, it's about taking care and giving a helping hand. One reason I want to focus on the daughters for mothers is that when women over 60 get into a more entrepreneurial space, who start looking for second career after working in the home for many years, especially, which is quite common in Japan, there is a gap in technology skills, in access knowledge, and how to enter into a wider community and to expand networks. And I believe that our featured contributor today is really an expert in all of those areas. And so I know you're going to love her. So I would like to introduce Yayoi Oguma, who is an entrepreneur and a business founder and a leader, a global leader in her own right, a very international, globally minded young woman, and who is on the start of her almost at 50 journey. And I hope she's going to be with us for many years as a contributor. So Yayoi, welcome, and I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's a great honor.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So could we start by you just giving our members just a little bit of an idea about who you are and where you come from?
Sure. I actually finished a 2-year college 30 years ago, and I was completely broke. I only had 6 pennies in my pocket, 6 yen, as you know, to be exactly correct, and juggled 3 jobs with 1 hour sleep, mastered English, and become an English head teacher at an English conversation school in Chiba. And English for 3 years and became a simultaneous interpreter. And then I interpreted Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Chief Cabinet Secretary Mr. Suga, and then also UN Secretariat, and so forth. So all the world leaders, I had, the privilege to be able to speak on their behalf in Japanese, translating their messages from English into Japanese. So that really helped me a great deal to become a global leader myself, because being a simultaneous interpreter, you need to understand the message, otherwise you wouldn't be able to deliver them in a different language. So, and then one day I realized that Japan has been suffering from the English education of long time. 6 years in the mandatory education system did not really bring all the Japanese students into a bilingual situation. So I really on a journey to fix that problem, and my mission is to make Japan bilingual. And along with that, of course, language skills are not everything for you to become a global player, to make a dent in the universe on this planet. So that's the reason why I am also into the human development or personal development, so that they will think globally and also play globally. So that's what I am all about.
So you never actually lived abroad. You
No,
acquired all of your language skills in Japan and just
correct.
out of sheer determination.
Yes, that's correct.
Wonderful, yeah. And now I know that you've become very passionate about the role of women at
Yeah.
every stage of the life cycle. Can you tell me a little bit about the work that you've done and your passion in that regard?
Sure. Right now, because of this corona situation, I think everybody is sort of, trapped inside the house.
Mhm.
And in each household, women have to play multiple roles in that same physical house. You have to play the role of a woman, wife, a mother and also professional career woman. So you really have to juggle so many different tasks. In the past, you had the luxury to be able to separate those roles by going into a different location, but that's no longer the case. So, and you are constantly, needed by your family members, cooking at home, and also encouraging them. Of course, everybody would be under a lot of pressure not to go outside. So because of that, this the needs for the ventilation for some kind of emotional you know frustration is always there, and it's usually the mother, the woman, who has to sort of mitigate that kind of frustrating situations. So I think especially in this time of the whole world, women's role is very critical in every sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And as women get past that 50 mark, I mean, for men, it's much more clearly defined. They kind of finish their corporate life and they head into a retirement stage. And so a lot of men actually reinvent themselves. They become, we're calling them silver adventurers, setting up for their second career and deciding from 50 to 100, how am I going to spend my days? But, the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare showed some very interesting statistics at an event that I went to not long ago that shows a super aging curve for men tends to be quite stable until, almost 80, and then they drop off and pass away. But for women, after the age of 60, they start a slow decline. And that there's a large percentage of women that are actually in care for 10 to 15 years. And you have to ask ourselves, why is it that women are finding that decline in their elder years where men are not? And the conclusion by the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare is that it's because the men maintain community leadership roles. They stay engaged, they stay more active. But the women have difficulty finding that place. So in a way, this is one of the motivators for starting Sushi Society, was to address that need, but also to help more men find that straight curve as well. But what do you think about that? Have you thought about that, or what do you think we could do to improve that journey?
I think daughters can play a huge role in that, because I think the reason why that the women feel sort of devoid of the roles that they could play in the community is because they don't have the access to the technology that they can use. They may not be able to realize that what they have in their hand, that this iPhone actually can help them find the second mission or second life mission. So I think our daughters can play a role of assisting them to find the information that they're looking for and find where their passion can be ignited. And of course they have the leadership skills, because once you can run the household and raising kids, that itself is a testimonial that you have a woman leadership. So it's just all about finding the right spot or right opportunity.
Yeah, I'm a mother of 4 kids myself, and my kids are in their 20s. And I know that even though I come from a corporate background and I've had thousands of hours of technology training over the years, I mean, I can't even imagine. I'm a former IBMer, and I still get my 25-year-old son to show me how to use my online banking and to do online application forms, because it wasn't kind of natural as breathing to my generation as it would be for your generation, because you're just that one step behind me in that context. And it's a very different scenario. I remember when we got email. I'm sure you don't. There's even just a generation 10 years behind, or certainly 20 years behind, has no idea what life was like before we had internet. It's hard to imagine, isn't it?
Mm.
How quickly things have changed. So
Yep.
to me, the women over 60 especially have been on a largely forgotten group in
Mhm.
terms, and yet all of the behavior change for healthcare.
Mhm.
Um, Japanese go to the doctor 10 times more often than North Americans. And a large part of that is because Japanese women need face to face care because they're not accessing anything online or using all these
Mhm.
remote tools. They're the caregivers. How do you think, what kind of leadership do we need in order to change that situation?
Actually, my English education program does provide that technology education to those women in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And it's surprising that once, like you pointed out, when we provide the face-to-face, very easy to follow um, instructions, they actually thrive on those technologies.
It's not
So
hard, most of it, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
So once they get used to it, like, you really, hit the head on the nail, really. So as long as, so that's the reason why I mentioned daughters, because the daughters, they usually have a physical access, to their mothers. So that means that they can actually, fill in the gap that, those 60s women need to just, get on board with the technologies, and then nothing complicated. Once they get around, they'll be able to, surf the internet and then find the information that they can, and leverage their life. Mm.
I absolutely agree. And I think that there's one other element as well. It's the belief in yourself that women often don't have that causes that decline. How do
Interesting.
you think, what are the challenges for women? Like, for instance, if the husband is doing his second career,
Mhm.
what holds women back from thinking of doing a second career themselves? I mean, technology is one thing, but
Mhm.
are there other challenges that we could address as a sushi community?
Yeah, I think the self confidence is very key in that, and that Japanese women especially were not taught to speak up in our childhood, because that was just a cultural pressure that the women should not speak up, and instead we should just quietly support the people around us. So that has to go away, I think. So therefore, mental support. That it's okay for them to have their own opinions and speak up, and once they have that self-confidence or self-efficacy, whatever you want to call it, self-love even, maybe lacking in those women, because they always were taught to self-sacrifice for their families. So once that psychological gap is also filled up, like some kind of a mental program or psychological program or personal development program, I think they will just so flourish.
I agree with you. There's
Mm.
another element too that I guess for me at my age and stage, often as you get older and you get to a stage where you retire, the concept of retirement used to be to remove yourself from the opportunities that might be blocking younger people behind you.
Mm.
And so it was a positive thing when there was a flourishing workforce where people would stop working and retire and get out of the way. And things have changed actually, because now for people to stop working at 50 or 60, they're now feeling, think, some guilt that they've become a burden to society.
Mhm.
All of the focus on older adults is on caregiving and the burden and the cost. Do you think that there's a new obligation for the sushi class
Mhm.
to become economically active?
Oh yes, I think there is an every reason why they should, because uh, they are physically capable of contributing to the society. And then once they get, receive such an opportunity, they actually will thrive better because they will be financially independent, meaning that they will give themselves more reasons to believe in themselves, right? Self-confidence will be boosted up. So, and society will thrive because economical independence means less medical costs and the caregivers time, right? And there's so many, younger daughters who needed to give up their hours and energy and sometimes career even to support their aging mothers. But actually, if the mothers were given early on more reasons to stay stronger and stay a contributor to the society, then they both could have lived even more healthier.
It's funny in Japan when we talk about aging, I get this image of very fragile 90-year-olds. But frankly speaking, we're talking a lot about 50 and 60-year-olds who are, you're just getting closer to that 50 line, right? Looking forward to that. I've crossed the 50 line, but we're not old. Why are we talking always about older adults as if they're aging and they need caregiving and they're fragile? Because I think there's a huge chunk of the population that's active and healthy and full of ideas, but there's almost like a social pressure for them to just retire. How can we change that mindset? How can we sort of age with more attitude and take pride in being like super seniors, which is kind of what the theme of our community is. It's like, how can you, if you know that there are more people 110 in Japan than there are 100 in all of North America, that means that up to 100, these people are active and healthy and well. Why the heck aren't they doing more stuff? What do you think about that?
Well, what I really think is that they probably, they were lacking role models in the past. And then that's the reason why they sort of, afraid or shy away from becoming a spearhead in that field. So, I think that's the reason why sushi community is very critical in that creating, because, a lot of people say that you just need to cross like two conviction lines. One, maybe I cannot do it. Then next threshold is that maybe I can. And then next threshold is, oh, I can. But in order for you to cross that conviction line, you need to have examples that if she can do it, then maybe I can. That kind of, testimonials or examples that you can easily visually see, that will inspire them to really keep crossing the conviction lines. Then I think that the tide will completely change and everybody will start to, more proactively assume more active roles in our societies.
Thank you so much. I love that concept of the conviction line. And actually, that is why you're here, Yayoi. So I'm so glad that you've joined us in the sushi community. I'm looking forward to speaking with you again about other topics and really looking forward to directing people to your blog as we get going. I'm sure there's so many topics that you can help so many people with. So thank you for joining today. And looking forward to more. I've crossed my conviction line. There's more to come. Keep doing all the great stuff you're doing. Thank you so much. Thank you.